we begin this morning with a look back at the Russia probe. We are taking a closer look this morning at the probable cause and whether there, in fact, was probable cause to start a criminal investigation into Donald Trump in 2016 and 17. We know that the special counsel found no collusion, no obstruction. We also know that the Obama Justice Department and FBI spied on the Trump campaign. These are facts. But was there a legal predicate, a probable cause, to justify spying one political campaign, spying on another political campaign? This is what Attorney General William Barr says he is investigating right now. Now, so far, the FBI has claimed that it launched an investigation into Donald Trump in the summer of 2016 and spied on members of his campaign because of this man, George Papadopoulos, and a conversation that he had with an Australian diplomat. We are taking that right now directly to the source. Joining me right now is George Papadopoulos, former Trump campaign aide, author of the book Deep State Target. George, it is good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Maria.
I want you to take us back to how this all began, because when you and I were talking about what you went through, it was actually stunning to me in terms of the level of people that reached out to you. First, before we go through this timeline that is really stunning, and I want our viewers to focus on this, I want to ask you, have you ever been to Russia?
I've never been to Russia, no.
Do you have any colleagues, associates that work in Russia or for the Russian government?
Absolutely not. In fact, I was working at a neoconservative think tank for 5 years leading up to joining both the Carson and Trump campaigns, and I was in the energy business.
Okay.
So as an American doing those two things, you're not working with the Russians at all, and you're not promoting their interests.
All right, so let's take it back to the end of 2015, and you are working with the Ben Carson campaign. We've got this timeline here. You are working for Ben Carson. You wanted Ben Carson to win, but you decide you want to give Corey Lewandowski a call, who is running the Trump campaign. You say you're interested in joining.
That's right. Actually, I had reached out to Corey Lewandowski even before Carson, I think around June or July of 2015. I just thought that Donald Trump was going to end up being the president. I thought he was going to end up choosing Marco Rubio as his VP. But no.
He told you they weren't hiring yet, that he would get back to you.
That's right. That's right. And we stayed in touch. I ended up joining the Ben Carson campaign after that.
So you're working for Ben Carson. You're in touch with the Trump campaign. Then Ben Carson drops out in January of 16. So you are left without working. You don't have a job. And somebody reaches out to you on LinkedIn. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was contacted by this company called the London Center for International Law Practice. I was living in London at the time. I was in the energy business in Europe. And they contacted me out of the blue. We'd like for you to come and work for us as a director over here. And I didn't think too much of it. And I went over there. And this company ended up being some sort of spark that ended up probably changing my life and the last 2 years of this country, because they're the ones that introduced me to this mysterious professor in Rome, Joseph Nipsad.
Okay, don't get ahead of ourselves. So you're working for this center. We learned later that this center actually has worked with the FBI in the past, right?
Absolutely. So all of the officials that I was working with at this company were either connected to, Western governments, Western intelligence organizations, or some of the top partners at the top law firms in the world were affiliated with this company. There were absolutely no Russians whatsoever at this company. And
they reached out to you on LinkedIn. That raises some red flags right there, because I'm wondering why a company working with intel agencies regularly, including the FBI in the past, reach out to you on LinkedIn. Why you? Why did they reach out to you working with Ben Carson? I'm just wondering if, in fact, more people were spied on, like Ben Carson's campaign, but we'll get to that in a minute. They reach out to you, you start working with you, accept the job.
I do accept a job. I get there, and within 48 hours, I'm a director already, which didn't make sense to me. It seemed like it was a fabricated type of position there, just to get me in the room and to meet various people and for them to introduce me to various officials around Europe and even the United States. So it seemed like it was some sort of front company and front job. So
fast forward to March, when you decide you are, in fact, going to join the Trump campaign. You go back to your colleagues at this center and you say, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, I want to go work for Trump. And then what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So I tell them I'm leaving, and they're all furious. Essentially, they're telling me, "Are you crazy? You have such high-level connections here in Europe and then in D.C. Why would you go and work there? You just finished working on Carson's campaign. He dropped out. Trump's
Okay, but
obviously
you
not going
decide
to win."
you're going to do it.
But
You're going to do it, and they
Yeah.
say what?
Yeah. And they're just furious. And they say, well, if you're going to end up leaving us, before you go, we need you to go to Rome with us because we have some people there who are going to help you on the campaign. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. And I went to Rome with them to this university.
Okay, so you go to this university in Rome and you meet some interesting individuals. Let's talk about that. One of those individuals is this gentleman named Mifsud. Tell me about the people you met in Rome when you're still working for the London Center of International Law Practice, which, of course, reached out to you on LinkedIn to get you this job. And you meet, and they convince you before you go to work for Trump, you got to go to Rome.
Absolutely. And as soon as I get there, I'm basically greeted by the former Italian foreign minister, Vincenzo Scotti, very high-level Italian officials who are affiliated with this university. I suspect there were likely FBI, CIA people there, too, because the CIA and the FBI trains at this university.
You meet Mifsud, and you start having meetings with him. Tell me about Mifsud.
Yes.
Who is Mifsud?
Yeah, so I'm introduced to Mifsud by the former Italian foreign minister Scotti and this company I worked for. And Mifsud basically is the overseas professor that Bob Mueller falsely characterized to the world as some sort of Russian cutout who was trying to conspire with me or collude with me and provide information that the Russians had Hillary Clinton's emails.
Now, he drops a bomb on you in one of the meetings.
Yeah, so after I meet him in mid-March, so before my name is even public in the Washington Post, these people are introducing me to Joseph Mifsud. So clearly there were some sort of eyes on me even before my name was public. So he meets with me. We have some bizarre conversations moving forward about a potential meeting between Trump and Putin. He could never introduce me to anyone of substance in the Russian government or anyone of substance in general. And in late April, he lets me know that hey, George, did you know that the Russians have Hillary Clinton's emails? And that's where, I was very suspicious of this person. And actually, facts and events preceding that moment and after were very bizarre.
Mm-hmm. So he tells you Russia has emails of Hillary Clinton's, and this is the bomb that you feel was the whole reason that they wanted you to go to Rome to meet him, because they wanted him to tell you about these emails that Russia had of Hillary Clinton. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. I think this person was some sort of plant. He's been outed recently living openly next to the U.S. Embassy in Rome. He's being protected actually by Italian intelligence right now,
so they didn't
and he's
want
gone
you
missing for 2 years.
They wanted you to go back and tell Trump about Russia having Hillary Clinton emails. Did you do that?
Absolutely not. That wasn't my job. You hear a lot of gossip and strange things when you're in these circles. And the last thing I was going to do was go and talk to the campaign about something that I thought was illegal.
Now, what happens next is really interesting to me, because over the course of the next 4 weeks, first you get the bomb thrown in your lap from Mifsud that he tells you Russia has Hillary Clinton's emails. You don't do anything with that information, but you think he's hoping you will. But in the next month, you get outreach from lots of different intel people. Is that right? You are contacted by U.S. intel officials, British intel officials, Australian intel officials. What was that all about?
Oh, that's a great point. So actually, April 15th, the Australian government reached out to me for the first time. April 26th, Joseph Mifsud tells me this information. May 2nd, I have the British government reaching out to me from this man, Tobias Elwood, who was the number 2 at the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he wants to have a conversation with me and get to know me a little bit. May 4th, I'm contacted by 2 officials of the DIA at the U.S. Embassy in London named Gregory Baker and Terence Dudley. And then I meet on May 10th, this Australian diplomat, Alexander Downer, who I testified under oath to Congress and told the FBI and Bob Mueller that I felt he was spying on me and recording my conversations.
So this is all what you believe is spying, recording your conversations early 2016, way before there was any FISA warrant to actually get a warrant to spy on anybody. And then it was Downer, the Australian intel guy, who really they got you with, because Alexander Downer has a conversation with you, and you were asked by the FBI, when did you first meet Downer? You tell them what?
Oh, so the FBI, so basically the FBI interview was, I brought up Joseph Mifsud, and I brought up this whole idea of who told me this information about emails, and then I got caught in a perjury trap, and actually that was my charge. I got charged with, I guess, lying about when I met this person. So this is what this whole case was really about. It was a complete setup and a perjury trap, but, you know, the information that I have now, and after I testified to Congress, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of recordings and transcripts of between myself and a lot of these assets, and I'm very hopeful that these are going to get public very soon, and the president is going to start declassifying this material.
So you told the FBI you believe you met him in March when in fact you met him in April, and that was the perjury. So you went to jail for what? How many nights?
I went to jail for 11 nights because of this. After I had honeypots, money thrown my way, wiretaps, surveillance by foreign countries, and then I finally get caught in some perjury trap and I go to jail for 11 nights. It was ridiculous.
And you feel that this was entrapment?
Absolutely. I feel it was entrapment, and I'm very happy to see Congressman Devin Nunes and the letter that he sent to Secretary Pompeo and Gina Haspel to get more information on this person, Mifsud, because if it's indeed proven that this person was really entrapping me, not even spying on me, and then there was a coordinated effort between these other various intelligence agencies, including the DIA and Australians, to extract this fake information and then spy on me with another honeypot in London with Halper. This thing reeks of spying, entrapment, and illegal and illicit behavior.
It's pretty extraordinary to me that it was so global, that all of these intel people are reaching out to you, and beginning with LinkedIn reaching out to you to go work for this London Center for International Law Practice. Real quick, why do you want the president to declassify these documents? What are we going to learn? Very quickly.
Yes, what we're going to learn is the involvement of the UK and Australia in interfering in the 2016 election. We're also going to get to the bottom of who Joseph Mifsud really was, who he was working for, and we're going to understand who was running all these spies at me and likely other people on the campaign, including Michael Flynn, who actually also encountered Stefan Halper in 2015, and I encountered him in 2016. So it's very important for the president to declassify this material so we get to the bottom of this.
We will leave it there, and this is why we wanted to talk to you, because this is why the FBI says it started an investigation. You were the predicate. George Papadopoulos is supposed to be the predicate because of that conversation you had. George, thank you very much.
Steve Moore, the former CNN contributor, has bowed out as the president's pick for the Federal Reserve. This after the other potential Fed nominee, Herman Cain, withdrew over the media's focus on past sexual harassment allegations. Moore was tripped up mainly by his past columns for National Review and elsewhere, once writing that female athletes shouldn't get equal pay for inferior work, and that female sportscasters shouldn't be on the sidelines, except for one who he said should wear a halter top. Moore was on offense on ABC a week ago and still defiant on Fox after the White House withdrew its support.
What happened, George, was this kind of smear campaign, this character assassination, and it began 2 or 3 weeks ago.
This is a little awkward for CNN, because every night they trash me now, when for the last 2.5 years I've been their senior economics writer. If I'm such a scoundrel and sexist, why did they have me on every night?
Well, it was obvious to anybody who's lived in Washington for a week, I think, that Steve Moore was not going to make it. Not only did he owe taxes and have a contempt of court citation on not paying child support, he had all these past writings denigrating women, jokingly or otherwise. He says a lot of it was jokingly. Did the press do its job here?
Well, the press can cover whatever it wants to. I don't love when they cover divorce proceedings. I do not believe in divorce, but I think that when people are going through those proceedings, the worst caricatures are in play. I think that there should be more restraint. I also think that humor writing should be contextualized as what it is. This is a guy who's been out for decades in Washington, D.C. He's kind of a creature of Washington. So I don't think any of this was particularly surprising, but it was portrayed as such. And I think actually that I think that the real dispute there might have been more political, or opposition to his very particular views on the Fed and whether they should target inflation, whether they should target interest rates or how inflation happens. But people were using these other things as a way to fight a proxy war about the real issues of their opposition.
That is absolutely true. And that often happens with nominees when they're opposed on policy grounds by the other party and you look for things that you can use. But in every other administration, a potential nominee is vetted first. President Trump, this is his style. He likes to toss names out there. Hey, I'm thinking of nominating this person. And if that potential nominee can survive the media's vetting, then he lets them bow out. But it's kind of like throwing them in the Shark Tank. And even Moore even said if he had known that his past writings would be dug into, he would never have wanted to go forward with the nomination. But that's the way that this town works.
It's like the Celebrity Apprentice DC style. See how they do when they go on. When it came to the smear campaign, the reason why I do agree that this was a smear is it actually didn't start with his personal writings or his background at all. It started with his qualifications. So what you first heard people talking about was whether or not he was qualified because he doesn't have a PhD in economics, which is laughable because even the Fed chair doesn't have a PhD in economics. And also,
wait. Why is that a smear? Wouldn't a debate over a nominee?
I think it's valid, but then it turned to personal.
At least
so
it was a substantive debate, yeah.
They started there when it came to his qualifications, and then when that didn't work because it wasn't a valid criticism, it then went to the writings, things from decades past, which I think there are some concerning elements. But I think as Americans, we're asking, is this the style we want to take to vet anybody who wants to do anything in public office and public facing? I think it's a discussion we need to have, that this is the appropriate way to vet people.
I think that's a fair question, but I think it's been going on for decades with nominees from both parties. And when you have a paper trail, as it's called, inevitably that's going to come up. But all this did overshadow. I mean, there was a debate, but it was totally overshadowed about whether or not they were suitable, whether they had enough economic experience.
Right.
Whether
Well, and the Herman Cain debate, I think, was much more along the lines of, is he qualified to be a member of the Federal Reserve?
He served on a Fed board in Kansas City.
As opposed to, but you had a number of U.S. senators saying they weren't going to support him, which was different, I think, than the Stephen Moore situation.
Well, this is so if you want to portray as either the left-leaning media went after these nominees, or you want to portray it as the Democrats were unfair to these potential nominees, this all revolved around, could either man get enough Republican votes in the Senate to be confirmed? And it became increasingly obvious, even as both said they would fight, that they could not. And that's what happens when the press stirs up these kinds of controversies.
No question. I mean, look, I saw a headline in New York Magazine that called Stephen Moore an unqualified misogynist kook. Now, I don't know how much people, look at New York Magazine, but
it's a major magazine.
Exactly. But I'll tell you, I mean, that is a really glaring headline about someone, even though it's in more of an opinion column. But my goodness,
that seems really unfair. A kook? I mean, the guy has a background in economics. He was a Wall Street Journal editorial writer, and he's been on Fox. He's been a CNN contributor. Kook?
Right. And I think it was extreme language. You saw him being called dangerous, that he would cause a global calamity if he were put in. But that, again, I think is because people actually disagreed with his economic policies. And they are different. And I think we're seeing a lot of
growth.
But they also disagreed with the political impact of the Club for Growth issue.
Well, now we've explained how it really works. Yes. Molly Hemingway, Beverly Hallberg, Capri Cafaro, great to see you all this Sunday.